Good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to come to you live on a Saturday afternoon, not a Sunday afternoon. We are used to coming to you on Sundays at 3 p.m. But sorry for the inconvenience, as we mentioned, we are going to have today's show on Saturday, and that is today. And I'm very happy that my guests are here with me. So my name is Pauline. I'm always happy to host this show every Sunday. It's actually our last show for the Teenage to Parent platform. As I had mentioned earlier, we started it as a response towards the teenage pregnancy issue that was reported, the huge numbers. So we just came up with a few sessions, have teenagers on the who came along, and parents, mothers, fathers. We had some specialists come. And today we want to wind up with the intentional parenting, because of course, with the talks that we've been having, we realize that it is both the parents and the children who have something to do in this issue. And so Fiona is our sign language interpreter. I want to request my guests to introduce themselves. We know most of us know them, many of us. So yeah, ladies first, please, Sophie.
All right, good afternoon, viewers. My name is Sophia Mbevi. Mbevi is right here, and I'm an intentional parent to 3 young people. Yeah, 2 girls and a boy, and I think we've been married, 23 years now. Yes, so we have many years of parenting combined, and we are happy to be on this show.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yes. Thanks, Pauline, for having us. It's always impressive to see what you're doing. So Simon Mbevi is my name, part of Transform Nations, where we do different programs, and maybe we'll mention it as we go. But I'm glad to be here. I'm a glad father to those 3 that were mentioned, and we are glad to have this conversation.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you very much. And of course, like I said, or I was telling you earlier when I was trying to get you on board, is that I couldn't think of any other people who have been very vocal on this issue of intentional parenting, because as most of you know, the Mbevis are the founders of Transform Nations. And maybe let me start by asking you, where did the passion come from? You know, the passion to talk about parenting, and especially intentional parenting. And Sophie being a leader, a proprietor of a school as well, of course, that has to do with that as well. So how did it all begin? Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. Maybe I'll go first. Yeah. For me, I think it's just the experience that I had with being brought up without a dad. I think I've said my dad died when I was 8 years old. And so the desire that I had to be fathered, the father hunger, and not finding that except in a music teacher and one other person here and there. But also just beginning to see the need for fathers being very crucial. And then of course, seeing my mom bringing us up by herself and being overwhelmed, and also beginning to have a passion for mothers as well because of that. So that's how eventually Transform Nations began. Then it was Transform Kenya. But I think our vision has been healthy families and changing communities. But that's what triggered. And of course, our experiences with parents in school and in different other settings in church, and just seeing how people struggle to be able to help the young ones to raise up. And just one last example, we do a program for boys called Boys to Men, a mentoring of boys. In fact, later today, we'll be starting a new class. And the more we talk to these boys, the more we realize they were good boys. They were just having challenges with their parents And so we said, all right, we need to meet their mothers. So that's how intentional moms. Then it was mothers of sons began. And then we realized also their fathers are not being involved. The mothers began to say, we're doing the right thing, but their fathers are not doing the right thing. So eventually we began intentional dads. So it's been experience, personal experience, but also realizing the need, over time. And I don't know what you would add.
Maybe what I would add is before I began, we started running the school that I run right now. I was working as a pastor in our church, in charge of the marriage and the parenting classes, what we call the family ministries. And I think I got to deal with a lot of parents, adults, of course, who a lot of them were facing relational crisis. And you sort of could, when you talk with them, you could trace the beginning of that crisis to a time when they were much younger. And so I began to feel that, if there had been some intervention in the life of these people when they were younger, then it would have turned out very differently for them. So I guess my passion grew out of that, and feeling that by the time you're an adult and something has gone wrong. Actually, someone said that what happens in the counseling room is reparenting. It's like you're being fixed where something went wrong along parenthood. Yeah, so I really felt that I needed to be that foster parent to others, to children, to sort of supplement what happens. Because again, in as much as we talk about gaps, it's also about what you know or you don't know, what you have to give or you don't have to give. So it's not like parents don't want to give. We grew up in a different age, where there was very little interaction between parents and children. And when we now become parents ourselves, we tend to sort of follow the model that we saw when we were growing up. But that doesn't work for this generation that is growing, our children. They are a lot more engaged. Maybe the way we've parented them has opened more communication. There's greater connection between parents and children. And so we can't parent them the way we were parented. We have to do it differently. So I guess my passion has been born out of all those experiences and interactions that I have had along the way.
Wow. And we thank God that you heeded to that call,
Yes.
that passion for it. So, but what is intentional parenting really?
Yeah, I think what I would say to that intentional parenting is being able to connect with the children very intentionally. So one, it's based on connection. And because you could be, Pauline, we've been around children during this COVID season. You could be around your children, but you're not really connecting. You're not asking questions. You're not talking to them. You're just in the same room, but there's no connection happening. So it's the intentionality, the plan, the thought, the preparation to connect. Number two is a plan. And intentionality to put in character or values in the children. So it's based on connection. Number two, character, that you're actually talking and instilling values to the children. You're not just imagining they're going to pick them up. You're actually talking through those values and seeing how they're playing them out in their lives. You're watching because you're there. You're right there and you're intentional about it. You want to instill those values. And so connection, character, and number three, competence. Which is an intentional plan to make sure that the children are getting the information and the skills that they need to do life. For example, when it comes to sexuality, which I've been talking about, is asking, are the parents actually sitting down and talking about those issues and giving the right information to these young ones and answering their questions and curiosity, and then helping them know how to say no. If it's girls, how to say no to the boys, and if it's boys, how to say no to the girls. So those are three areas of intentional parenting: connection, character, and competence.
Wow. Now, I'm thinking about maybe Sophie can go for this one. I mean, in the two parents who are both working, they go in the morning, go in the evening. How then can, of course, COVID has changed things. Now, some people are now actually staying home. But then how can parents be intentional now that we are not with them the most of the hours?
Okay, I think once you make the choice, or I don't know whether, yeah, let me say, once you make the choice to have a child, I think you have no option really but to be involved. And as a teacher who interacts with children a lot, I've seen many instances where parents hardly know their children. They actually don't know. One of the things that I'm very excited about this COVID season is that now we have been forced to be intentional about connecting with their children. And a lot of our parents are saying, I understand my son better. I know my daughter better in ways that I did not know before. So I think, like we said, intentionality, it means that there is a conscious decision followed up with a conscious effort, to connect with those children. And connection is where, we parents, you must be a student of your own child, because children are growing every day. Even when you have 3 of them, they are different personalities. If it's gender, that's another dynamic there. So just being so connected with your children, in a way that if something changes, immediately that something has changed. So I think what I would say to parents who are busy and are out there is that, who are you looking for those things for? What is it for? Isn't it for those children? And they say that, children appreciate, they love the toys that we bring, they love the life maybe that we afford them, but nothing can replace active participation in the life of a child. And you'll find a child who maybe has everything money can buy, but they are very broken because the parent is not there. So I'd say that even when that is the case, there is a place for us to say at least one of the parents, we need to find a way where one of the parents at least is grounded in the home. Otherwise, we lose our children, and some of them lose them forever. We don't even, they don't want to connect with us when they're adults, because we never connected with them when they were younger. Yeah, so I think that is what intentionality is about, that no matter what your circumstance, you prioritize your children and you make a way of actually connecting with them.
Yeah, and maybe what I would add there is the little time that you have together with the children is to intentionally connect to them, because sometimes you have 30 minutes and these days we have gadgets. You can make use of that for those who are working out of town or traveling, but being able to say, okay, I'll prioritize, but the time that I have, I will be very engaged. I'll be involved, make sure that that time counts so that there's both quality and quantity. There's quality time and to the degree that you can, the quantity, the little time you have, use it the best way that you can.
Is it possible for a parent to want to be intentional, but they are not able to connect with their children, really?
Well, that's possible for several reasons. Number one is maybe the way you were brought up. There's emotional distance between you and your parents. And so you never really connected with your parents and you don't know how to connect with others. You're there, you're attempting to talk, but there's just no connection because of your personal experience and what you've gone through. So that could be one. But number two could be that the child is going through certain issues and that they have come to a point of a closed spirit. And they call it a closed spirit in children, but they really don't want to talk to you for whatever reason. Maybe you were not there earlier in their lives, or maybe there's something that has happened that has not been resolved. Of course, there are different ways of trying to open up their spirit so they can trust you afresh and you can be able to talk. If there's no trust, if there's been a bad experience before, if there was a long time of absence before, and so a big gap there in creating relationship, there's a time that you may want the connection, but it's not happening. And at that point, you need a bit of guidance on how to break, the ice, remove the walls created between you, and also build yourself, deal with what you have experienced before so that it doesn't stand in the gap, on the way rather.
Maybe I could also add a situation where the parent is very authoritarian, and so the children don't feel that the parent is a safe person to talk to. So in that way, then you can actually just feel the children may feel that they're not safe connecting with you. So how do you become safe? By being involved at an early age, and then also just being fair and respecting your children. Our culture doesn't feel that children are there to be respected, but they are little people that are made in God's image, and they are worthy of our respect. And I think that's one of the things that we have to unlearn, because culture has taught us not to see children, not to respect them, not to value them as individuals that are worthy of our attention and our affection. So I think all of those things are things that could actually get in the way, such that when a parent now feels they want to connect to their children, it's too late, because the child has already decided that my mother or my father is not the kind of person that I want to talk to or I can open up to concerning certain areas of my life.
Yeah. So Sophie, do you mean, like, for example, if you do something wrong, that it's okay to apologize to your child? It shouldn't look like it's how can I apologize to my baby?
Yeah, if you because we make some mistakes also, and part of being vulnerable and admitting that you have been wrong, that you made a wrong judgment, is actually very affirming to a child. I remember once walking into a situation and misjudging it completely. And of course, my child was at the end of that, my wrath. And then later, I came across facts that I realized actually I was wrong. I made a judgment based on some misinformation. So in as much as my parents had never apologized to me, now I'm the parent in charge. So I just went and I told the child, concerning this and this and that, I actually realized that I was wrong and I didn't have the full information. I misunderstood this thing. And I asked them to forgive me. And first of all, the child was shocked, like, yeah, mommy is apologizing, like, for real. But later, like a few days later, they came and said, Mom, when you said sorry to me, it felt so nice. It felt so good that you could actually come and say sorry. And that changed our relationship. So yes, children, the same way, Pauline, if I wrong you, you expect me to come back and mend the relationship. And if I'm in the wrong, you expect me to apologize and things get better. So I think we need to realize that our children are also people, and the same way we deal with adult relationships, we also need to model that kind of respect and reconciliation when wrong has been done. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that. Let me just take you a little back a bit. As I was just doing the introduction, I said that one of the reasons why we started this platform was just a response towards the teenage pregnancy issue, teenage and sex. Actually, I call it teenage and sex because sex is what gives pregnancy. So I don't know, Pastor Simon, what is your perspective on that issue? teenagers and sex?
Well, definitely it's just to say sex and sexuality generally is a gift that God has given us. And it's not a taboo subject as it was in our time. I mean, it was impossible to hear, Pauline, your mom or your dad talk to you about that. You would get surprised. When my mom mentioned it once, it was so scary. I think I was giggling the whole day. How could mom talk about that? What's wrong with her? What is she thinking? But of course, today the society has been a lot more sexualized, and we need to understand. We need to talk about it because it's a gift, and it plays a big role in who we are. I mean, we are men and women, we're boys and girls, we're growing and noticing one another. So it's part of growth and development. So being able to realize that, but as we realize that sex or sexuality is like fire. It's a good servant, but a bad master. It's a good servant. It's something God has given us to use at the right time, in the right way. And so the need for values, that we give the right values and guidance and information to the young ones, the teenagers, so they don't get involved in it. But they're asking for questions, they're seeking answers. And we need to give them those answers and tell them this thing is good, but it needs to serve you at the right context in the right relationship, which is marriage. And if you get into it this early, then these are the consequences. Having that confirmation that when it masters you, then these are the consequences of it. So we need that conversation a lot more, so that our youth are both informed and equipped, to be able to handle all the sexuality issues that they are going to face in our days. So we can't put our head in the sand like the proverbial ostrich and imagine things are going to be okay. We have to have the conversation with our children, answer the questions, give them the values, because if the internet and technology teaches them these things, there are no values. But as parents, we get to teach and give some information with values, with right values and guidance. Yeah, so I would say the conversation needs to continue, and we need to pray for our children, train them the right values, and guide them in this turbulent times. Of course, we also need to keep them busy. When like now most kids are saying, what's the use of reading anymore? And we have 6 more months. At home, we need to create things that they could do. Part of the reason why sexuality and the practice thereof reduces for kids during school times is because they're busy and they're interacting with other people. Now they could be bored at home, so they access some things, they talk to each other, they have the gadgets, they call their friends. It just increases the wrong interaction because of a lot more time in their hands. So managing time, managing technology, giving the information and equipping them with the skills.
Thank you for that. Let me give this to Sophie, because many times as parents, we beat ourselves. You feel like, am I doing right? When you see an intentional parenting because you just feel like, have I been inadequate? Maybe what can I do more? How would a mother, now speak about a mother, and then Pastor Simon will talk about a man, a father. How would a mother know that they are not parenting intentionally? What would make someone be concerned?
Wow. That's a very, very tricky question, because I believe every parent at the core of who they are, I believe every parent, assuming that they are in a good state of mind and emotionally stable, it is only natural that a parent wants better for their child. And many times, actually, parents want better for their child than they had. And that I saw that with my own parents, that they came from a very difficult life. And I saw them, and they constantly told us, this was our life. And as your children, as our children, we want it to have more and to have better. And that's the same thing we keep telling our children that, there's some things we are doing and you have right now that we never had, and we want it to be better. So I think every generation of parents wants better for their children. But because we're human, we end up being limited. And I don't think that there is a parent on earth who is 100% all that's supposed to be. So I think one of the things, I think we come from that place of we are imperfect. So don't wait for your child to fail or to get into a difficult life circumstance for you to now start beating us. And that's actually what we tell parents. Come into class. You see, I don't know what you do, Pauline. I'm a teacher, and I went to school for 4 years to learn what I know, what I do. But there is no school of parenting. But there are numerous. Now there's so many programs that address parenting. And I think it's out of that realization that no generation of parents ever knows enough or knows everything to be adequate in their parenting. So the same way, that, I want to be an engineer. The engineering knowledge does not grow on me. So what do? I go to engineering school. So I'd say, first of all, please go and interact with parents, because sometimes, not sometimes, you're usually parenting in your own space. And in that space, who is there to tell you that you are wrong? You're right, you're the boss. But when you go and interact with other parents, you hear their experiences, you learn how they relate to their kids. You're like, oh, you mean I'm the only one who does not do this with their children. So that is one. Go into spaces where they're having conversations on parenting. You will always learn something. Number two, have honest conversations. We have honest conversations with our children, and we ask them, is there something you feel that as your parents, we could do better? And it's amazing the kind of things that children tell you. They'll tell you, Mom, I think you should stop shouting at us. We feel bad when you shout.
I feel you, Sophie.
Yes. And it's very shocking. You grew up being shouted at, so you think it is how normal relationships work, but it is not how they work. So get feedback from your children. I'd say read books. And I think when your children are failing, don't beat yourself as a parent. Remember, they're not angels. They have come into this world. There are challenges. They're also human, so they will fail. So I think when a child is struggling over a thing, it is a good time for you to reflect on that journey of life together, with a view to learn, but also with a view to help this child come up. Don't judge them. I think one of the biggest things that children fear these days is judgment. They feel that parents judge them, are quick to judge. They don't want to listen. They don't want to understand. They have a particular way they want to deal with issues, and we lose them that way. So, like I say, it is difficult for me to say when does a parent know when they're failing, but I would answer that question by saying that we all need help with parenting. We don't know everything. And you see, today my child is 19. I'm parenting her at the level of a 19-year-old. When she turns 21 in 2 years' time, I, as a parent, also needs to grow to know what it means or what she needs from me as a 21-year-old. Because what she needs from me as a 21-year-old is not what she needed from me when she was 17, when she was 19. So I think it's for us to know that we are constantly growing, and we constantly need to learn how to parent our children.
Well,
Pastor Simon, about the father.
Yeah, I think I would say as fathers, sometimes I know moms beat themselves a lot more As fathers, sometimes we assume we are doing okay, even when we are not. I think a study we did some while ago, a survey, showed that an average father in Nairobi spends only about 8 to 12 minutes a day with their children on average. And there's very little that you could do with your children. Of course, COVID has changed that a lot, but we have gotten back to work, so we are drifting back to the same. But I would say there are 3 things that every dad needs to check to know whether you are intentional or not. Number 1, are there surprises? Do you ever get home and you look at the children and say, whose child is this? When did this happen? When did you get to the next class? When did you start doing this subject? When you find yourself, you have huge surprises about your children, then it means you're not connected. You don't know what is happening. If once in a while they rise up and do something and you wonder, where did that come from? And you have not seen it come over time. If you're not aware of what they are going through, you feel like you're surprised by your own children, and then it means that there's a gap there, that you're not being very intentional. You've not been involved. That means when you find yourself ignorant, like one of the things we do when we do father-son or father-daughter events, is that we ask them questions. We ask the dads questions about their kids. Do you know, who is your child's superhero, favorite superhero among all of these heroes that they watch? What kind of music does your child like? Stuff like that. And many times we find the fathers get 3 or 4 out of 10. They don't even understand their children. Some of them are struggling to remember the birthday of their child, when it was, and stuff like that. So when you find yourself having some ignorance about details of your children, important details, then it means you're not being intentional, because you're not following through with your children. I think lastly is when kids are not doing well, and you can tell that you have not talked about those issues. When suddenly you find they have been watching pornography for 2 years and you had no clue, then at that point you wonder, you realize I'm not being intentional. Or when suddenly, you find out they have been they have tried drugs, and you never saw it coming, you never saw any signs. Again, you realize, okay, things are going bad here. I don't even know when it started and where the rain started beating us, between us and the child. Then you know that have not been intentional. If you haven't spent some quality time with your child for a while and felt like, wow, we had a good conversation, we talked enough, that was good, then you're not being intentional. Lastly, I think we talked to the fathers about the 5 Ps, and I think in many ways they apply to the moms as well. That you need to be present and engaged. You need to be a protector. You're protecting your children from technology issues and all of these other dangers that they are facing. You need to be a provider. That means you know their needs. What needs do they have? What do you need to buy them? What are they asking for during this season? Emotional, physical, and other needs. And then, of course, you need to be a priest. So you're teaching them values. Is asking yourself, when is the last time I actually talked to my children about some value and was there to be able to walk with them in that value? And then lastly, there's being a prophet. If you were asked to affirm your child, would you get 2, 3 things that you would quickly affirm them and say, my son is very good in this, very good in this, and very good in this? If you can do that, then you're involved. But if you begin to think about, well, what does she do well? What does he do well? Then you're not really aware of your child. So practicing the 5 Ps, being present, being a protector, a provider, priest, and priest is about teaching values, and prophet is about calling out, affirming, encouraging, bringing out the best in the children.
Wow, that's powerful, and indeed spills over to both mother and father. Now, Sophie, running the school and being an educationist for that long, what would you say would reflect on a child who is not intentionally being parented, or maybe the parents are not present? Because I know presence also means you're being intentional, though of course Pastor Simon said you can be there but still not connected. But what
True.
would reflect in such a child? Yeah.
Present but not involved would be what they call the lights are on but there's nobody at home. Yes. So really, I think the reflection of poor performance, very poor performance in terms of academics is one of the effects. Very low self-confidence. The children they will not be, if they're younger, they will be reserved and not want to go out and play with others. So like when a child is very reserved, they don't want to go and play with other children. It's not natural. Part of being a child is an intense need to play. So if you find a child who does not want to play, then something is very wrong. And when you dig for sure, you'll find that there's something that is not going home. And then there's also retrogression. Sometimes you will find that maybe a child is well beyond the age where they should be potty trained, but they are still having issues like bedwetting, so that usually signifies something that is wrong with them. I'd also say like an overly, a very high desire to fit in. It means that child is not maybe being affirmed enough. They're not confident about belonging. So those are some of the manifestations of. So there will be social problems. There will be personal issues where the child doesn't have a lot of confidence in themselves. There will, of course, it will relate to academics. Either they are not focusing, very short attention span. Sometimes you'll find very angry little children. They're very, very angry. And at the slightest provocation, they will fight. And it's because something is not right at home. You'd also have children who are, these days, they actually do a lot of self-harm. You'll find kids who are cutting themselves. I think earlier on when we talked about sexuality, a lot of the times there's a lot of ignorance amongst, also part of being a child is that you lack experience, that you lack information, that you lack knowledge about many aspects of life. So when you find children making bad decisions, it just that means that the conversations are not happening. Nobody is giving them the correct information. And so they are going out there. If, for example, a child feels daddy is not safe to talk to about sexuality, they'll go to their peers. And of course, their peers will tell them what they know at their level. They'll tell them, come, let's try out this. So a lot of acting out sexually has to do with just pure ignorance, where maybe the girls are told, you can never get pregnant if you have sex for the first time. So that is purely ignorance. Somebody has not had a crucial conversation with that child to tell them the truth. So all those are manifestations. So there's what they call maladjustment. Maybe if you go into counseling, where the child is facing all manner of social problems, emotional problems, and all this now spill over into the classroom, and they affect their grades. So children who are being intentionally parented will always be good students. Even when they're not gifted academically, you can tell that this child is doing a lot more in the classroom.
Wow. Pastor Simon, you wanted to add something?
I think the only thing I would add there is when we have children who are stressed, they're just manifesting issues of stress, then it means that there's a lot that is happening at home. that the parents are not giving attention to. I think she has already talked about developmental gaps, where you realize that these children are not developing in a certain sense. Usually in parenting, intentional parenting, we talk about 3 areas that we parent children in. Number 1 is that children have a lot of good in them, and that needs to be enhanced. So if you're not growing in their strengths, and their goodness, then it means there's someone not affirming them and encouraging them in that way. Number 2, that there's a little sinner in every child. So every child has some bad in them, and as parents we get to reduce that bad. In other words, we are training them, showing discipline, inflicting the right kind of discipline to the children to guide them, so that they can learn what is good. And if they're spoiled and they're doing stuff and saying certain names, using certain words that are in the movies that should not be used, things like that, then we know the parents here are not involved, because there's certain bad in the child that has not been disciplined and guided. And lastly, then there's what is immature, that as parents we need to mature our children by helping them be able to do stuff for themselves, build relationships and stuff like that. So without parental involvement, and those 3 areas suffer. You find the strengths are not being enhanced, you find bad behavior is not being controlled, so they feel the freedom to do disrupt other children, call them names, fight them. It looks like they're never really guided at home or disciplined. And lastly, that there isn't maturity that is happening, that is age-appropriate maturity in terms of growth and development. So yeah, I think that's what I would add there.
And I know because you have a program also for single moms, and I don't know, because most of the time when we talk about parenting is the father and the mother, then what does this single mom, how would she play? I'm sure she can't play the role of a father as well. So what happens to a single mom? You also mentioned that you are brought up with a father. How would parenting be done in an intentional way by a single mom so that the child has both sides?
Yeah, thank you. We do a talk for moms. We call it Silver Moms, which is mainly single moms. That's what we do. And when we talk with them, we say, okay, play your role as a mother. Be the best mother that you can, because you're a mother. But then realize there's the place of a dad. This child has a father hunger, and especially between 8 and 12 or 13, every child begins to long to hear the voice of a different person, especially the voice of their dad. And during that time, what we tell the single moms is that you actually need to understand that for the child, and if possible, and where it's okay, you introduce them to their dad. And tell them you have a dad and he's somewhere, because kids begin to inquire between 8 and 14. They want to know, who is my dad? Where was I? And they ask questions, and sometimes quietly, and they never really get to say. And so we tell moms in the appropriate way, if it's something that is possible with guidance from a counselor, then let the children know about their father and where he is, because recently we were dealing with a lady who is in her late 30s who is going everywhere looking for the dad, and eventually she got to find the dad. The mom died a while ago, and I refused to tell her who the dad was. When she found the dad, she was very surprised, because the dad even wasn't aware about her. I think the mother got pregnant and then separated with that man, and they never really talked after that. And so she's now very excited. She calls me every other day to say, oh, he texts me and says, my daughter. And she's in her late 30s, but she has become a little child again, just to experience a dad. So kids actually need that place of a dad. And the way we tell single moms to work on it is find someone else who can play that role. That's part of the reasons why we do boys to men, because some of the boys who come there from single, mom homes, and so they get to experience these mentors who are working with them. They are men, and in the process, that hunger is filled. That gap is filled. But we tell moms, make sure you expose them to a father figure. It could be someone who is their uncle, or their coach, or their youth pastor, or just someone who can get involved in their lives. Expose them to that. So that then the gap they have about fatherhood will be fulfilled in that way. Don't assume they're okay, that you can be a super mom who is both mom and dad. What the role a dad plays is very specific to his gender. The role a mom plays is very specific to her gender. So that understanding, I think, helps moms begin to realize there's a gap and I need help. For me, because I think I did not get a mentor or a father figure to step in after my dad died. Eventually, I found that in my music teacher when I was in high school. He's the one who became close to me, would affirm me, would talk to me, and he didn't know it, but he actually played that role, and that really helped because I began to refer to him. I mean, even now I'm referring to him, but it became like the dad I never had. So just to tell moms, that's important. Make sure you help your children to fill that gap.
Wow, wow, lovely. So now we are going towards a close, but I know again you have a program for mothers of sons and at times daughters and sons. What would of course I know a son is different from a daughter, but what is that is so unique in mothers to sons, and you know what I mean? What is the difference?
Well, I'll say something and maybe Sophie will say something.
Yeah.
I think we always struggle with the other gender to a big degree. Like for fathers, they need to understand some of the unique things about daughters because they were never a daughter, they were sons. So in a sense, they have a clue about sons and what's going on with them because they were once sons. But fathers need to understand a lot more about their daughters. Their daughters talk a lot and they ask many questions. I mean, I have two daughters and sometimes the conversation keeps going on. I keep joking about it. The other day, my daughter, actually yesterday, my daughter cut herself and then she came to show me how the cut was and what happened, how it came close to the nail and how it is. And we talked like for 20 minutes about that. We wouldn't have done that with my son. You'd have told me, Dad, I've cut myself. Oh, go and put some salt. And the story is over. For my daughter, it became a conversation like the whole day. We talked about it. So fathers to get to understand that aspect of their daughters and therefore connect with them appropriately, not assuming they are like boys. And then for mothers to understand that their boys are different. Like when we tell mothers that boys don't hear very well. The hearing capacity, develops slowly. And it's even worse when they are watching football and they can't hear you. You sound like background noise when you're calling them. It has to do with their brain, how their brain works. When they focus on something, they're fully focused, but also has to do with their development of hearing capacity, which fully comes of age around 14, 15 years old, biologically. So when we tell moms some of those things, they wonder, what's wrong with these boys? We tell them, don't give boys 5 instructions at a go. They will remember the last one. Just tell them one thing or 2 things first, and then let them do it. I think it's getting to understand the other gender and then how to connect well with them. That's why we do some of those father-daughter, mother-son events so that we help the parents appreciate the gender differences. Anything to add?
Wow,
maybe what I would say is that, you see, from the time a child is born to the time they go to school, so you get, as a mom, you get a child, so you have your maternity leave, you're the primary caregiver. If it's over, you employ another woman. I've hardly heard of male nannies. most of them are female. So you hand over your child to another woman as a mother alternative. Maybe the next place you go to is Sunday school in church before they go to school. Again, in church, who is teaching the children? A lot of those people are women. And then you go to primary school. Very rarely will you get a man teaching at the lower primary, early childhood level. So we feel that for maybe one of the reasons why boys lag behind is probably the first time they see a role model in terms of how to live life, how to make decisions and all of that is when they go to upper primary, because now at class 4, the teacher is not one. You have the math teacher who might be a guy, the geog teacher who might be a guy. So especially if this child is growing up in a home where there is no father present, you see, he lags behind, because who does he see making decisions? Who does he see organizing? Who does he see executing? It's either his mother or a replacement of his mother. And so we began to see that when we began what we now call we call it the intentional moms, because there was an outcry from the mothers of daughters, but we began as mothers of sons, and it was just realizing that as girls, we almost have like a 9-year head start, on the boys, just in terms of seeing another person who is like you, leading, making decisions, and working. So I think it was that, and I think we got that feedback from the Man Enough class, where men talk a lot about the influence that their mothers had on them, either for good or for bad. So we actually began that class as a result of the kind of feedback we were getting from the men. And so we said, okay, we are trying to fix, Simon is trying to fix the big guys in the Man Enough class. Why don't we talk to the women who are building future men, so that when those little boys grow up into men, hopefully they will have been brought up by somebody who tried to understand them and who tried to create a supportive environment around them. So that's why we really began to emphasize on the boys. So we are saying that for the first 9 or 10 years of a boy's life, there's a lot of female presence, and yet as women, we have no experience being men. We may not understand. And it's small things like, my friend was fighting with the son. She wanted a clean toilet. So there was a fight that when he goes for a short call, should he stand or should he sit? How do, and that's a real thing. It's a gender thing. So there are all of those little things that we do our best as mothers, but we're not setting up our boys to be the kind of men that will be successful as men. Yeah. Yes. So that was what Mothers of Sons was all about.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, and for all the insights that you've really brought forth about intentional parenting. And I want to give you time for a parting shot, to dad out there, Pastor Simon, who really desires and is actually working towards being that intentional father. And of course, for Sophie, a parting shot to an intentional mother. And yes, as also you say, we'll definitely put the page Transform Nations on our page, and I'm sure most people will keep engaging. So over to you for the parting shot. Ladies first.
All right, ladies first. I'll just say, keep on doing what you need to do. Keep on being present. What I tell moms is that, especially when the children are younger, there are so many teaching moments, and you had better be present for those teaching moments. There's nothing that can replace presence. And what I would say is that quality time usually is quantity time. Quality is quantified by quantity. I mean, you cannot say that, I'm offering quality time for, 2 minutes a day. It will not be quality at that time. So I'd say, let's be intentional. At the end of the day, these children will remember the values that the time that you spend to them. So I think there's somebody who said that love for children is spelled T-I-M-E, time. That is how children know. When you spend time with the children, that's how they know that you love them. Everything else is a fad. The children don't feel it. This thing that we talk about, quality versus quantity time, the children don't understand it that way. They know you love them if you spend time with them and you actually enjoy it. So my prayer is that God will make it possible for every mother out there who is listening to be there for their children and to know that that's the greatest investment that you can ever make. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, thanks again for having us, and keep doing what you're doing. I think I would just say to the dads out there, the call is not to be a super dad who is perfect and does everything well. Those are yet to be born. I think the call is for you to be intentional, to be able to use your time and your skills to raise up the next generation. And when we talk to the dads through our intentional dad program, we tell them we want them to have two things. Number one, to be better dads, to be good dads in terms of character. So building their character so that they have the kind of character that connects with the children and models for the children. So good dads, but number two, good at being dads, getting the information and the skills to be able to do better their role as dads. And so find that, find some training. And I think I've been passionate about working with others, training 1 million fathers in the next 4 years. We wanted to do it in 3, but because of COVID, it's become 4. And we are hoping in that time that there'll be 1 million trained fathers who are both good in terms of character. They've built their character towards their children, and good at being dads, which is about acquiring the information and skills that they need to better father. And so dads, let's do this. We're very important. We're very crucial in the development of the children. Let's be there for our children. I've written a little book, Dad is Destiny, which means fathers shape their children in very crucial ways for their destiny. And someone may ask, what about mothers? Mothers are life. They give life to the children. But dads also play a very crucial role. So dads, let's do this. It's good for us. It's good for the children. It's good for our generation that we are intentional dads.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sophie and Simon. So there's intentional dads, there's mothers of sons, there's Ezra, at least
Yes.
I know, and there's I know something else. Dads, fathers to men, boys to men.
Boys to men. So there's Man Enough, and Man Enough is for adult men. Ezra is for adult women. Then we have intentional dads and intentional moms. Those are our parenting programs. And then we have Silver Moms, which is a forum for mothers who are raising children as their primary alone, mainly. I don't like to think it's alone because I think there's community, but they are they are the ones offering primary responsibility and care for their children. And then there is Boys to Men, and hopefully we'll have very soon a version of the Boys to Men for the girls.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the mothers of sons is part of the intentional moms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much. And the Lord continue. I was just thinking, Pastor Simon, maybe 3 years will still work. You don't need to go to 4 years for the million, because I think now that most people are at home, it's possible to do their million in the 3 years. But anyway, may the Lord just help you on that. The Lord bless you so much, Pastor Simon and Sophie, and more grace as you continue giving, even giving what you never got, because you know it is important for generations to come. And I think when we get it right at parenting, our church, our nation will be able to stand. So may God help all of us. Thank you, viewers, for listening. We believe there's something you're carrying home for yourselves. And yeah, so it was my pleasure to host you. And my name is Pauline, and our sign language interpreter is Fiona. And like I said at the beginning, that this was our final talk on Teenage to Parent platform. It's been a joy coming here every Sunday speaking about this topic. And we know that we'll continue hearing much more, even from different platforms like the Transform Nations, as we continue to pray for the next move that the Lord wants us to go to. So the Lord bless you. God bless you as you parent. God bless our children, and God bless Kenya. Bye-bye for now.
Amen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.